I would dive deep into the glittering red mirror of Suspiria and swim deep to reach the hand that climbs from the bottom to tickle your brain and lick the inside of the thoughts your mind thought it would have before it was even an idea. That's the kind of thing that people who like Suspiria say, right?
I don't know what any of that was.
If you're still listening, this is our final transmission.
We're here, Jamie. You gargling up a storm over there. Welcome to Final Transmission, the podcast where Sam Russo and Jamie Carruthers talk one horror movie a week for the rest of your lives.
That is exactly who we are and what we do.
Mission statement. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. How are you?
What are you wearing?
I'm wearing a pink t-shirt, Sam. What about you?
I'm also wearing a pink t-shirt. We look weird right now, listeners. We're both bald with beards wearing pink t-shirts. Not a coordinated effort, but we now have a uniform and a mission statement. We're good to go.
It's weird because I very rarely wear a pink t-shirt and almost always wear a hat.
Yep, and today you've opted at the exact same time as me through pure synchronicity to wear your only pink t-shirt and no hat on the day that I chose to wear. I think I've got two pink t-shirts, and they're both exactly the same, and I very rarely wear them. And here we are.
Here we are.
How insightful. What are we talking about today, Jamie?
Today we're talking about Dario Argento's 1977 fever dream Italian classic, Suspiria.
Suspiria? What the hell is Suspiria?
Suspiria.
Suspiria.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a Dario Argento movie. Is it a giallo?
No.
Okay. Well, it's Italian, kind of, technically.
Yeah, and this is like Dario's... I call him Dario. We're on first name terms, yeah. This is Dario Argento's first real foray away from the giallo. He's made 5 movies up until this point. 4 of them are giallo. One of them is a historical drama.
Yeah.
And so this is him taking a step out of the giallo world and trying to do something fucking weird. And
mission accomplished.
absolutely, what a success.
It's widely heralded, lauded as a total horror classic, right? A definitive masterpiece of not just 70s horror, but horror of the modern era, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mainly because it's so weird and also incredibly influential.
Definitely.
And like, obviously, I mean, we'll talk in depth about Dario Argento and his films and his sort of approach to filmmaking. But it's as much a feat of cinematography, specifically the relationship between Dario Argento and the DP Luciano Tovoli, who hadn't worked together before at this point. Luciano Tovoli is like a really prolific Italian cinematographer. Dario is widely lauded as the sort of second coming of Italian horror directors at this point. Huge openings for his previous movies. And I think interestingly, they both have quite a like hyper-realist approach to filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're both outside their comfort zone here. And that just makes it really wild to watch. I mean, again, we'll talk about it a lot more in depth later, but this is, I would say, a weak script from Dario Argento. It was co-written with his partner at the time, Dario Nicolodi. The visuals and the gore are what we're here for here. It's all about that, and the story, such as it is, gets a little bit lost in the muddle, I would say.
Okay. I mean, where does this fit in the twisted vines of the Jamie Carruthers catalogue? When did you first, because it's such a quintessential movie, it feels like you would have watched it early, but did you?
I think I may have watched it quite early and hated it.
Right.
I don't quite remember, but I think I might have watched it around the time when I was really digging into horror and found it quite boring.
Right. It's probably hard to slap this in the shuffle of a load of trauma madness and B-movie magic.
Absolutely.
And enjoy it.
but I definitely came to love it in my sort of late teens
Mm.
and would hammer it. It would very often be on in the background while I was doing other things because at any point you can look at the screen and see something incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, I did imagine at various points that you would have masturbated to this Goblin score multiple times.
This is one of my favorite Goblin scores, but not my favorite.
To masturbate to.
Yeah, it's so good.
Now, first
It's-
time I'm going to hold you accountable for a wild claim. Is it so good, or is there 5 seconds of good music repeated 60 to 80 times?
There's quite a lot of good music, I would say, on this
Okay.
Goblin score.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Like the way that it sort of weaves, obviously that main theme with the whispering, which is amazing. Like
Yeah.
the crashing, screaming sort of acid jazz nightmare. I love that stuff.
Mm.
The Claudio Simonetti's like interpretation of what like ballet music is, I find that really interesting.
I find it quite funny. I mean, to
Yeah.
be honest, their interpretation of what ballet is funny enough to me. Like, none of these people are dancers. They're just like lithe young people spinning around a bit, which is fun. Anyway, we're
Yeah.
getting too far into the weeds. Why don't you drop a synopsis before people go nuts?
Okay, so a synopsis for the film Suspiria that definitely does have a plot.
Yeah.
Susie Banyan, young American trained dancer, has been invited to a prestigious dancing school in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
As she arrives, she's not allowed in for whatever reason and sees someone leaving. And then she gets in, something weird about the dancing school. Is it presided over by an ancient witch? Only time will tell, Sam.
Time does tell. And the
Yeah.
answer is yes. No spoilers, but yes. That's what Suspiria is about.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? Like, I know that you've seen Suspiria before. I know that you have some incredibly incorrect opinions about it. So,
Not true. I've seen it maybe, I think this was probably my third watch. And the first time, it was Halloween 2018, I believe. And it was significantly built up by its cult classic status. And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a wild ride, as it is. A movie to be experienced rather than enjoyed, potentially. Second time I watched it was to refresh my memory, I guess, and go through the agony all over again in anticipation of watching the remake. But I got so sick of the original that I didn't watch the remake. And then I watched it for a third time today for the pod, I guess with a slightly more analytical sheen. So it's by no means a film that I would watch for pleasure, but it's another one of those films that I respect for, multiple reasons, mostly just the artistry and the fact that it exists, and a lot of the production facts and the method to the madness is really interesting. But again, yeah, it's one of those movies that I think I appreciate more than enjoy.
yeah, they seem to be coming up quite a lot, don't they?
No, not really. I'm really looking forward to Frankenhooker. Look at it that way.
Yeah, I picked Frankenhooker just so I can make you watch it.
This
And I
is
can
a-
also make Kaz watch it.
Yeah, this is a super sweaty August lineup. Four hard weeks of serious cinematic chow. And Suspiria should be an easy one. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a movie that divides the camps, and the vast majority of people listening to a podcast about Suspiria are people who like it.
Yeah.
And then the minority on the other side are people who find it boring, confusing, melodramatic, pointlessly over the top, wildly self-indulgent, etc., etc., etc. And they're not going to seek out a podcast and sit and listen to two fucking pink shirt chuds talk about it for 90 minutes.
The
So,
idea that an Italian film by a man who either calls himself or is often referred to as the maestro
yeah, right.
is self-indulgent. What? How rude.
I don't really understand the concept of self-indulgence in cinema. The whole fucking thing is self-indulgent. I don't see it as a valid criticism of art, really. Like,
No.
so what's art if it's not self-indulgent? I guess it's people-pleasing, popular, populist.
Yeah.
What is it? Made for others to enjoy without any enjoyment of self? What's the deal?
Who's making that? Who's doing that? Like, I would say even like people who are derided as filmmakers, like Zack Snyder or Michael Bay or whatever, like they're making it because they want to make it, and their sensibility is saying, you know, I love explosions and leering at Megan Fox. So yeah,
And
I'd
so
say
does
that's-
everyone else. So let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand how you, like you said, how you can criticize a movie like this as being self-indulgent, because the whole point is surely that the entire concept, the look, the feel, every second of the action of the movie comes from deep within the recesses of one dude's mind. He's auteur-tastic, and yes, it's a big group effort, and there's a lot of artistic fingers in the proverbial Argento pie, but surely most of this is his fucking, like you said, his fever dream.
Well, that's not true, I would say. So this is heavily inspired by Dario Nicolodi's grandmother, who was at a dancing school, and they were taught by witches, and so like very specifically, like specific things that are happening in the movie are based on that. And the way that Dario Argento talks makes him sound much more like an auteur than I think. I think in order to be an auteur in filmmaking, you have to basically suck a load of credit out of everyone else who's involved.
Sure.
And he does that, and that's fine. Like, whatever. I'm not here to, you know, right the wrongs of history for Daria Nicolodi. Like, I'm sure she's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's based on that, and then also based on, like, quite heavily a section from Thomas de Quincey's, like, poems. He wrote a poem called Lavana and Our Sisters of Sorrow.
Okay.
Where Thomas de Quincey, who is like a British drug addict and writer, basically lays out these three sisters, or these three mothers, Mater Suspirium, Mater Lacrimosa, and Mater Tenebrium, which form the basis of this loose trilogy that Suspiria starts and ends on Mother of Tears, which sucks.
Okay. So it's all downhill from here. But surely drawing all that together and making what he makes here is the act of self-indulgence we're discussing. Because
yeah,
like all of that can exist in a vacuum on its own and not become this movie. You know, it takes his like level of self-obsession and desire to express himself artistically to make that coalesce into a movie, right? Surely.
Yeah, and I think it's also like it's self-indulgent and it's not self-indulgent at the same time, to be like, I make films a certain way, and so I want to make a film a different way.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like, in order to push yourself to make something else, like, you're not making Suspiria thinking, oh, I wonder what the audience is going to like. The audience would like it if everything is fucking red as fuck.
Yeah. That's a lot of red. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Technicolor, right? It's one of the last movies made in this way or something. You had to fucking hunt down some dumb dick machine to make everything even redder.
Well,
That's
was
a great reduction of a really interesting story, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, that's actually what the cinematographer Luciano Tovoli brings to it, because basically when Dario Argento first got in touch with Tovoli, he was like, I want to make this film. And he was like, well, we both make films this way, so why would we do this? And so Tovoli like shot a bunch of stuff and then processed it like on standard film, and then processed it using the Technicolor method and brought up some quite interesting looking things. Yeah. Showed that to Argento, and he was like, yes, this is the direction, but keep dreaming is what Dario Argento said to Tovoli. So like they basically like built on that together, and they used this sort of Technicolor process, and it's not the last film to ever use it. It was the last film to sort of use them at that time. There was a big sort of Technicolor revival in the 90s, but they did it sort of fake. Yeah, they did it in a fake way. They sort of
Yeah.
digitized it and worked backwards. Whereas this is like maybe one of the last films to use traditional Technicolor processing.
Does that make it more interesting to you?
No,
Oh,
I think I don't think the act of doing that makes it more interesting. I think the film looking the way that it looks is what makes this film interesting.
right. I mean, how do you feel about the overall look of this film?
I think it looks incredible. I think,
Yeah.
like I say, you can have this film on in the background, and every time you look at the screen, you will see something incredibly beautiful or jarring, unless it's that one shot of Pavlos when he first arrives and he's sort of grinning.
Yeah. I can't imagine why anyone would ever have this film on in the background of anything. Ever. Apart from maybe like a weird swinger party full of goths. Like there's just no, not for me, bud. In the background, what are you doing while this is on? Just having a panic attack? What the fuck?
I mean, I'm often having a panic attack, but
Yeah, just, maybe that's because Suspiria is always on. Have you thought about that?
yeah, maybe. Should we take a break and come back and get deep?
I think we're done, dude. I think we're finished. Yeah, let's take a break.
Whoa, holy shit. I guess that's why they call it Phantom Power.
Oh boy, I'm back. You back?
I am back, Sam, and I have got something important to tell you.
Uh-oh, here it comes. I'm fired. Finally, it's happened.
No, unfortunately, you're not fired. I wanted to tell you, Sam, that you should pre-order the new Red Scares 20 Years of Dreaming and Scheming comp.
I should, if only I knew when it was released. Yeah, that comp, the Red Scare Industries 20-year Dreaming and Scheming comp, comes out on September 6th, but you can pre-order it now at redscare.net in many, many formats to please your ears. I'm not fired, I'm fired up. Fired up for the Red Scare 20-year anniversary comp.
It's got loads of great bands on it, including No Trigger, The Falcon, Cobra Skulls, Nothington, Sam Russo, this guy.
Sincere Engineer.
Sincere Engineer, one of my faves. Elway, The Menzingers, The Holy Mess.
You've gone so far in, anyone you leave out is going to be really offended. It's a really great track. It's all exclusive tracks, all new stuff, a couple of covers in there, loads of good shit to wrap your gums around.
So yeah, go to redscare.net or redscare.storeenvy.com and pre-order it.
Why not?
Why not? What else are you going to do with all that money?
Exactly. $46 barely buys you a coffee and a fucking Danish nowadays.
It does buy you a coffee and a Danish.
That's it. I don't know. I don't buy coffee or Danishes anywhere other than my kitchen.
You sell coffee and Danishes in your own kitchen.
And I buy them off myself. It's a really good business model. It works about as well as Red Scare's business model. Look at it that way.
Okay, Sam, Suspiria.
Yeah.
It's good, innit?
Yes and no. It's a complicated question. It's a heavy one. I don't know. I enjoy this. It makes me feel like some sort of cinematic moron because I enjoy the pretty colors and I enjoy the shapes and the architecture and the sets and almost none of the acting and about 15% of the sound coming at me. But I know I'm supposed to love it. I know I'm supposed to respect the magic and consider it a masterpiece. But there's not much to it for me. And I struggle with, you know me, bud. A movie without much narrative thrust or depth of character is really hard for me to latch onto. So try as I might, this movie is often, as in like 2 out of 3 times, a rough hang for me. But, part of that is just that everyone looks the same and nobody's really doing anything.
Yeah, I don't agree.
I know.
But I understand because I do think like I mentioned in the intro, like the narrative thrust here is pretty minimal.
I mean, yeah, it's girl goes to place, does things, there is evil, vanquishes evil. It's, tale as old as time when you strip it down to its bare bones, which is not a problem, is it? But there's nothing built around that really in terms of anything but, like you said, kaleidoscopic screaming.
Yeah. I think Dario Argento said that you should view the film as as an escalating existential nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. And who is ever going to describe it better than that? A, it's the guy that made it. B, it's perfect. And C, that is an acquired taste, my friend.
Yeah. I haven't met anybody that outright hates Suspiria. I think
yeah,
because
I've only read like bullshit online. I've
Yeah.
never actually met a human who hates it. I don't even, I would go as far as say I like it. There's nothing that I would say, oh, that sucks. But I have to be honest. My experience of a movie, the quality of the experience I have when I'm watching a movie is usually defined by how much I enjoy it. I don't really enjoy watching Suspiria, but I haven't watched the remake. Have you?
I have, yeah.
Is it good?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about self-indulgent. That's a very self-indulgent movie with,
Is it?
I would say, Tilda Swinton in particular, obviously playing 3 different characters. And it's weird, and it just sort of, I mean, but I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
It sort of very cleverly doesn't try to match the sort of the visual flair of the OG Suspiria, and it's pretty like grey and beige.
Yeah, greige, if you will.
Yeah, and uses like the performances as like the existential kaleidoscopic nightmare, really.
Yeah.
And builds and builds and builds on that till you get to something really intensely feverish. And I think it's good.
Yeah.
But it's not a patch on the original.
I think the opening sequence of Suspiria, say right the way up to her knocking on the door of the dance school and the runaway scene. And this is again weird to say. Apart from the performances, I think is some of my favorite horror visuals, kind of ever. Like in terms of a series of a sequence, if you will. I just love how it looks, and it's such an incredible way to go into a movie and come into a world that has this very specific look and feeling. But I like almost nothing about the performances. So that sort of is true of the whole movie for me. I love what's happening in terms of shape, color, camera positioning, movement, the sort of artistic palette and construction of everything in front of you, the fucking mise en scène, the works. But the people are just fucking ruining it for me. The dubbing is an interesting aspect.
Well, I mean, a couple of things here. But the dubbing in this is probably the best dubbing you're ever going to get in an Italian horror film.
Yeah, in terms of like being well dubbed, quote unquote. Yeah, sure.
And I think, I don't know if like I would go this far, but I think that like here it almost adds to the insanity of it. I think because we're in such a surrealistic and expressionistic place that like that feels like it's a choice.
Yeah, and that is a tool that works massively in the movie's favor because people are acting here without knowing what the other person's saying. They're having lines fed to them in their native tongue off screen. They've got shit happening all over the place while they're acting because there's no sound being recorded. All of these things contribute to that really jarring, disconnected, strange, off-kilter, off-beat delivery and the bizarre feeling that you get between characters where there's gap, there's air, and there's strange grind. And all of that, ultimately, thankfully, serves to make the film even more unnerving and an even more disconcerting experience to be a part of. But all like quality judgment aside, it does still make it a rough hang.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think going back to the intro section, like that sort of first sequence, I do think that is the best that this film, like the film really hits the ground running. I love when she's in the airport and like every time the automatic doors open, you hear a bit of the score.
Yeah.
And like it's sort of tells you that like once you leave the airport, you're not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you that. It's like the whole thing feels like a fantasy novel to me, like a really badly written, trashy fantasy novel. And that is such a fucking like threshold moment, isn't it? The door opens, here comes the creepy world, it closes, you're safe. What are you going to do? What's your decision? Are you crossing into that or are you staying here? You don't have a choice. You're in.
Yeah.
It's great. It's wonderful.
And then like when she gets to the school and Sarah or whoever it is, the other girl is running away, it feels like you're joining a film at like the climax of a different movie.
That's such a great point. Yeah, absolutely. You've got no frame of reference for who this person is or what's happening. But you're right, the position of the camera makes it feel like something's happening over there that I haven't been a part of. And it's just unspooling all around me. Where the fuck am I? Whose side am I on? And the movie does a great job of completely disregarding all of those conventions. You know, you're not really supposed to know whose side you're on, or you know who's going to live or die, or if you should care. And that's a fun place to be as a viewer. It just can be a little bit grating at times, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I say, I could enjoy it, but I do think, like you say, that those performances are challenging. Obviously, it's very famous that like the script was originally written with like 12-year-old girls in mind.
Yeah.
And when Dario Argento was challenged against making a film this violent with 12-year-old girls in it, he then cast young women, 20-year-old women, but didn't change the script.
Yeah.
So you get these really weird scenes of like these girls interacting and talking like they're 12 years old, but they're 20.
Mm.
And like obviously there's the other thing where he like moved all the door handles up, so everyone has to
Reach.
up to get the door handles.
Yeah.
And I think that works beautifully
Yeah.
in terms of creating an extra level of unease.
Definitely. It's
An
drunk funhouse madness. Like,
Yeah.
you can't relate to these young women. Already it's a step for a viewer, right? We're looking at elite ballet dancers, right? No frame of reference. Okay. We're in a sort of massively fictionalized part of Germany that doesn't feel like anywhere real. Again, difficult to get into. And then all these adult women, these artists, these dedicated professionals are acting like 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Just another like barrier to getting to the sense of character. And that's a fight that sort of dominates the whole movie. And that's, again, just another, you know, warped mirror and another bizarre thing to kind of walk around as you try and access the story. And where that puts you, I think, as a viewer, is smack bang between the comfortable opinions of like, one side is this is challenging and beautiful cinema, and the other side is this is shit. This is not accessible. There's no story. It's boring. It's aggressive and difficult to experience with any kind of pleasure because it's stabby and loud and jarring and jumpy. And you're put right in the middle where you have to kind of pick a camp at all times. So it's really fun to kind of navigate and swerve between the two and be knocked off balance by one factor on either side at every single plot twist and every single visual. That's why it's uncomfortable to watch. Obviously, all of these factors combining in this fucking alchemy of sorrow. So that's why it's not fun, really.
Yeah.
It's fun for you, clearly, because you're that guy. But all of that is also not that deliberate, is it? It's more like he's just kind of rolling with lots of incredibly bizarre techniques and situations that are dictating the outcome of all of this crazy art.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the way that the Italian films were shot and the way that they had actors from around the world all giving different performances in their native languages.
Yeah.
Like historically, when you weren't making a film that was so insanely outlandish as like Suspiria is, that just sort of felt weird and jarring, and you had to roll with it. Whereas again, here it feels like it's part of the melee of fuck that's just happening in front of you. Yeah. And one of the things, like thinking about like the barrier that you were just talking about, when I'm watching people die in really violent ways, normally I am generally putting myself in that position and being like, oh, that would hurt. Oh, the guy got his Achilles tendon sliced. That's painful, and I don't like that. It makes me cringe.
I've got one of those. Ouch.
Yeah. But when I'm watching, you know, these girls get hacked to smithereens by a guy with really hairy arms, like, I find it so difficult to relate to that. And it makes me feel icky and weird in a way that I haven't experienced before. Because, like, sometimes you're in, like, killer POV and you're like, oh, I sort of feel guilty for this because it feels like I'm doing it. Or it's like you're in the victim POV and it's like, oh, that would really hurt if it was happening to me. But like, you don't feel that way when you're watching this. You just sort of feel almost entirely passive in those really, really violent scenes. And that is, again, don't know if it's a choice, don't know if it's meant to be like that, but it's fucking odd.
Yeah, it's unnerving. And like you say, it's unlike most of your experiences of watching violence in movies, right? Because like you say, you normally can align yourself with a position and act accordingly. And I've thought about this a lot because I wondered why the gore wasn't particularly effective to me and why it all just felt like I was just being battered with a visual I was supposed to appreciate but couldn't. And I think it's because the people that are dying so often look inanimate. To me, they almost always look like mannequins, and I can't help but think that's deliberate. They look dead before they die, which is really interesting. So, yeah, I don't know, same as you, to what extent that's deliberate or to what extent that's a totally subjective experience, for me/us. But there's something very still and strange about the faces of a lot of these dead people and a sort of waxen quality. And they're lit pretty dead on a lot of the time in a sort of strange way that faces aren't really lit in the rest of the movie. So I don't know what's happening there, but it just made me think I'm not a part of this violence. Same as you, I'm sort of hovering around it rather than being massively involved. And that's kind of witchy and kind of cool. Maybe we're supposed to be the invisible witch while all that's happening.
Yeah, maybe. Interesting that you mentioned the lighting there. So Luciani Tavoli, he actually used like really old-fashioned lights when they were making this. Ones that like basically were really out of vogue in like filmmaking.
Okay.
Like big old arc lights.
But they were
And he
hot
would
as
also
fuck.
yeah, and he would also like bounce everything off mirrors. So all the light was hitting mirrors before it hits the faces in order to like really sort of nail on like contrast and shadow. Obviously, cinematographers generally think very in depth about how they're going to light a scene and how they're going to shoot a scene and how they're going to frame a scene. And they obviously work very closely with the directors to do that. But I think there's some interesting innovation here using really, really old techniques, similar to the Technicolor process.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes Suspiria completely unique.
Yeah.
And like you say, the performances aren't the best. And the facial acting isn't always great. And like the blood is so intense and so red and so shiny that like when blood is on people's face, when the girl, for example, in the beginning is like hanging through the chandelier, like head through the not the chandelier, the
Through like the ceiling or whatever.
yeah,
the
the
glass.
skylight or whatever
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, her face looks so sort of shiny and plastic that it's hard to even register it as a human. And like you say, the people look like mannequins.
Yeah.
We see some of that like throughout Dario Argento's work, but it's the most prevalent here. And like you say, I don't know if that's on purpose,
Yeah.
but it's certainly fucking weird.
Yeah, and it's there you go. That's the fucking motif of the whole flick. Yeah, it's not. Do you know what? I don't even when I'm watching this movie, I'm not in a space where I expect a good performance from anyone. So it's not like I'm criticizing. Oh, she's not a very good actress or whatever. It's more like, none of the humans don't really matter in this movie. Like, it's more of a music video than a narrative movie to me, which is probably the most fucking MTV generation thing I've ever said in my life. But it doesn't feel like narrative or people are important really in the movie. It's more ethereal and it's more driven by strange forces, which is the really interesting part of it for me, because this is a portrayal of witchcraft unlike any portrayal of witchcraft I've ever seen. And it's not classically my favorite, demonizing witchcraft and turning it into a violent force that is terrorizing people isn't always my go-to. But that's what makes it interesting. It's quite a reductive look at a really complex, exciting, and interesting facet of, folklore, popular culture, etc. But it's done so in a way that almost disregards completely the presence of humanity and focuses instead on visualizing psychic phenomena and, psychological happenings. So, on that level, it's fucking fascinating.
Yeah, it's almost like the characters are just chess pieces, just being moved around into various different situations.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to what extent do you think these are supposed to be realistic portrayals of actual female humans?
Well, I think that Jessica Harper is meant to be a real person.
Mm.
And I think that Joan Bennett as Madame Blanc is also meant to be a person.
Yeah.
And everybody else doesn't really matter.
I love this conversation. We understand. You know so much about Suspiria, and I understand so little about it that we're going through the cast saying who is a person and who isn't. What a movie!
Can I say something that I find really funny in
Yeah.
Suspiria? So the girl that dies at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Her name is Pat Hingle.
Yes.
Like the character's name is Pat Hingle. Now, there's an actor called Pat Hingle who most people would know as the Commissioner Gordon in Tim Burton's Batman movies.
Okay.
And at the point of making Suspiria, he'd been in, I want to say, 300 westerns.
Yes.
So it can't be an accident that this girl is called Pat Hingle.
Why the fuck did they call it a Pat Hingle? That doesn't make any sense.
It's so weird to me that, like, she's called Pat Hingle. And they say it. Every time they say it in the movie, I'm picturing Commissioner Gordon from Batman 1988. It's like...
Such a great point, Jamie. I hadn't even noticed that. Wow. Yeah, just weird on weird. A weird sandwich on weird sandwich.
And going back to Joan Bennett as Madame Blanc, I think she's amazing.
Do you?
Yeah, I think in terms of, like, the performances in this movie, like we say, I think Jessica Harper is good. She's doing what she does.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Joan Bennett is, like, genuinely quite creepy. She sort of sounds like Raymond's mum, for Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, she does.
And she's sort of got this really intense, like, used to be incredibly beautiful and now is quite like a bit old and a bit severe.
There's a lived-in bitterness there, isn't there? That's pretty hard to deny in the performance. And it's not that you look at her and you think, oh, faded flower or whatever the fuck. You just see this incredibly stern, borderline, unreasonable, unrelenting stone of a woman, and you just sort of imagine, don't you? You think, where the fucking hell is she? Where are you from? What is your life? It's a fun take on the dance instructor. You know, the dance instructor classically in movies is usually a pretty tough cookie, but this is like pretty fucking next level. I don't enjoy the performance at all, but I find it, again, really interesting.
Another thing is that I read a story from Dario Argento where he says that when he was a kid, he thought his headmistress was a witch who wanted to eat him. Do you think that's true? That's a true story?
I don't really fucking believe anything the guy says or care. I just don't like him. And if he starts saying things, normally I'm like, oh, it's interesting that serves to make everything you're doing sound even cooler. Like, I feel like there's a lot of art in the world where meaning is attributed after the fact. And I think that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying everything has to be intentional. I'm the fucking polar opposite of that. I think it's great that you can mythologize your own work after it's been released and you've got some reaction to it. I just don't find him a particularly interesting dude, which is a shame because I know you absolutely fucking suck his balls off.
Yeah, no, I love Dario Argento. I just think he makes interesting movies. But I also think that is, if that's a thing that he thought when he was a kid, it was a fleeting thought for a second.
You don't think he thought that for like 7 years of intense tutelage?
Yeah, definitely. Like, you don't think that. People don't think
if you
those
do.
things.
Do you remember it? I don't know. I only remember the teachers I was horny for. I don't really remember anything else.
Yeah. You went to the David Lee Roth school of...
I went to the David Lee Roth school of tequila and fucking. That's not true. That would be inappropriate. My parents would never send me there.
They couldn't afford the tuition fee, right?
I know, right? It'd be fucking extortionate. Yeah, listen, I think you're right. I think he is an interesting filmmaker, 100%. It's just really hard to dig. Do you know what it's like? It's like people who don't like Tom Waits. I bet they're like, fucking hell, I bet it's really fun to like Tom Waits. I wish I could just get there. I wish I loved a guy who was like banging horseshoes and growling and really fucking great at piano, but not really doing it well. I bet that's fucking great. That's exactly how I feel about Dario Argento. I'm like, fuck, these guys look like they're having fun. Why don't I get it?
I don't think people that don't like Tom Waits are like, they look like they're having fun. I think they think, why are they listening to this man growl?
Yeah, probably. But there's got to be a level of self-awareness where you realize you're missing out on something. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's the same when I look at people who love disco. I think, fucking hell, I wish I could just dance and enjoy the night. Disco would get me there. And then I put disco on and I'm like, oh, fuck this. I'm jealous of those people. So there's a level of envy here where I look at Dario Argento fans and I think, cool, look at that fandom. They're absolutely loving it. They don't care that there's no story or good performances or any dialogue you can actually latch onto or any wisdom or fun or insight. It's just mayhem. And it's like, I don't know, people who love Burn Piano Island Burn. Brilliant. Knock yourselves out. It's hard to listen to.
Burn Piano Island Burn is a seminal Blood Brothers record.
See?
Crimes is my favorite and it is the most accessible.
How did I know without even knowing you'd be enough of a Blood Brothers fan to know another Blood Brothers album?
I think Blood Brothers are amazing. One of my faves.
Yeah.
I think Crimes is in my top 10 records of all time.
Crikey. That's another bold statement. Is Suspiria in your top 10 movies of all time?
I want to say yeah, but I've never sat down and figured out where it would actually sit. It might end up being in the top 15.
Okay. Is there a Tom Waits album in your top 10 albums of all time?
No, it's just growling.
Brilliant. What about a disco record? Any Bee Gees up there in the old top 10? You
no.
probably have a fucking top 10 disco chart, don't you? Your own.
I don't, but I quite like sort of Detroit techno, which sort of came out of the disco scene in Detroit in the 80s off the back of disco.
Maybe Suspiria is a movie for people who buy tapes.
Yeah.
Could be. Is that a way to sell it to... It's not like a hipster movie, is it? You can't be that dismissive and just be like, oh, it's just a movie for hipsters. It's more like, I don't know, there's more meat on the bones.
Yeah, I think it's a movie for people that don't really care about what happens in movies.
You wouldn't watch it on Halloween, I don't think.
No.
I bet people do.
I think if you watched it on Halloween, it's in the background at a party. You project it on the wall.
No, dude. Why? What kind of parties you going to?
Parties where cool people like looking at red things.
Yeah. Okay, all right, I'm coming. Let's what's your Suspiria pairing? Drink and food combo for actually watching it, not having it on in the background.
That's a good question because I've never thought about this.
Interesting. Because you're not a big food and drink and movie guy. The
No.
three don't form a pyramid for you. They're separate.
Yeah, so let's say my local Odeon was showing this. And I only have the choice of things that they sell in the Odeon. Or
Sure, you're not bringing anything in from outside. No pizzas.
I think if I have the entire universe of food to pick from,
Yeah.
we'll be here forever.
Okay. Nobody wants that.
No, I don't want any of the food from the Odeon. So
So you're not going. End of story.
I think I would go to the Pick and Mix and buy only strawberry laces and what are those like red tube things that have like the
The
white.
white stuff in the middle.
Yeah,
Electrical cables.
yeah.
Nice.
Like I would only buy those, and maybe I'd throw in a couple of like classic white jazzies.
Ooh, why?
I don't know, just for a bit of extra,
Cleanse the palate.
a little extra frisson.
You go with a cherry Coke.
No, I think I would go for and
Red wine?
This is perfect. It's not red wine. It is the Tango Ice Blast where they mix both of the colors, because that goes from a very vibrant blue to a very deep red.
Interesting. Very nice.
So
See,
there
now
you
you're
go.
equipped.
Yeah.
That's a great night. You're having yourself a good time.
I'm having a good time, although I'm furious that I've spent £8.70 on just strawberry laces and
Yeah, you've got like a 40 quid night out of the cinema. Brilliant.
yeah. But that's my pairing. If I had the entire world of food at my disposal, who knows where I would have ended up. But there we go.
Nice. I'll see you there.
Yeah. What about you? Have you got anything in mind?
I'll just eat maggots and drink piss.
Yeah.
Really get into it.
A gallon of Baskin Robbins.
Yeah, again, fuck me. I went recently to the cinema and I said to the guy, "Hey, buddy, what's the flavor of the month?" And he went, "We don't have one this month."
He must
Oh,
listen to the
okay.
podcast and therefore
Yeah.
is.
It was a different guy, some dumb kid. I want my guy back. He was great. Fucking nearly killed me.
When I worked in the Odeon and when I would work on the Ben and Jerry's counter, I would drop so much ice cream that I would then scoop up and eat in the back. It was
What? You would drop ice cream on the floor of an Odeon and then eat it?
I have cleaned that floor.
Exactly. You're a terrible cleaner. What the fuck? That's not like dropping a fucking bag of something or a dented can. That's dropping a basically a liquid on the floor and then scooping it up and eating it. Didn't you get it for free for working there?
Absolutely not.
Fucking hell, that's desperate shit, Jamie. No wonder you like Suspiria. Fuck me. If you'll eat ice cream off the floor, you'll watch anything.
Working in the cinema was horrible.
Because
You
you
get
were
to-
eating off the floor. That's a choice. No one
No.
made you do that.
That's not the horrible bit. It's shit hours, long shifts, and every movie ever ruined for you.
Why ruin?
Because you see the last 10 minutes of every movie.
Oh, why are you going in the last? Oh, they don't do that anymore, I guess. They used to do that, did they?
Yeah, you have to go in and clean up. I would clean up after people.
What,
So
10
you
minutes from the end?
Yeah.
Fuck that. Get out. I'm watching a film. What are you doing?
People,
Crawling around eating ice cream, shoveling dropped popcorn in your mouth like a little fucking goblin. Get out.
you told a story recently about you and your dad sneaking pizzas into the cinema.
Yeah.
There were so many times when I would clean up whole Nando's chicken carcasses off the floor of the cinema.
So bleak. And by clean up, you mean devour with your mouth.
So many people, and you would watch this happen, would get to the end of the movie and be like, "Oh, I'm done with my popcorn now. Tip."
It's fucking atrocious behavior. I even watch fully grown adults now just walk out and leave all their shit on the floor. Like, there's a bin on the way out. Take it with you and put it in it. I'm going to start like vigilante justicing these fucks in
Yeah.
your name.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to force them to eat a whole chicken carcass if they leave their popcorn behind.
The ice cream avenger.
That's me. I'm coming for you. Dude, eating food off the floor of the Odeon is probably the lowest thing you've ever told me you've done. And believe me, there have been some behind closed door talks that would curl people's fucking eyelashes. That's bleak.
It was just all I could do to get my money's worth out of the Odeon.
Your money's worth. They're paying you. It's a job.
They're paying me very poorly.
Your view of the world is endlessly fascinating to me, Jamie, even more so than the work of Dario Argento. Here we are, back to Suspiria. So
Yeah.
is there anything you really want to tell people about Suspiria that they might not know? Because you probably know everything about it.
I don't think so. I don't know if there's much that I can say about Suspiria that people haven't heard 1,000 times.
That's the danger of talking about a famous movie, I guess.
Yeah. I think you have to like the music of Goblin to watch this movie and enjoy
Do you
this
think
movie.
so?
Yeah. Like, because it's so integral to the movie.
But-
you have to tolerate it.
I bet a lot of people have no idea it's Goblin.
Yeah. I like Goblin so much that I named one of my cats after them.
That's very true.
I think you have to understand, you have to like the music, is what I'm saying. Because if you don't enjoy the music or understand why the music is happening,
Yeah.
then you're up shit creek.
You're
Without-
you're being battered the whole movie basically
Yeah.
by stuff that you don't like. Yeah. I think the main theme is fucking magical. There's
it's
so much about the
beautiful.
movie that evokes that feeling of magic, and I think Goblin are central to that. But the combination of Goblin and some of these visuals is fucking magnificent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love the way that it sort of plays with the diegetic and non-diegetic with Claudio Simonetti's whispering.
Yeah.
And like, even if it's not diegetic and it's just sort of happening on the soundtrack, it feels like it's happening in the scene.
Yeah, and it's
Like-
not like there's anything particularly sophisticated happening with, crazy audio techniques or anything. It's just the placement of it that's scary. And again, sort of misleading and beguiling and sort of hypnotic. There's just so much going on with audio visuals, the combination of audio and visual in this movie that put you fucking in a weird position in a strange headspace. And yeah, without Goblin, you've got a completely different fucking movie on your hands, and it's probably about 7% as enjoyable.
Yeah. I wish I could hear. So Goblin wrote a score for this before the movie was made.
Yeah.
Like, the myth is that they made the music before the film was existed, and that's not strictly true. They wrote a score based on the script, and then they played that on set to help the actors get into the headspace.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. Mostly, I must have been for Dario to get into the headspace. But I want to hear that score.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that score.
Yeah, the motivational music of Goblin. I mean, you sort of dismiss that as almost like it's normal. That doesn't happen very often, does it?
No, well, I think, like, obviously Goblin are a prog band, and I would say that Dario Argento is like a prog director.
Yeah.
In as much as like he's doing things that using instruments that everybody uses in a fucking weird fucking way, and making it weird, and it also loves the smell of his own farts.
Yeah, he's the theremin player of art house cinema.
Yeah, he's the Rick Wakeman of Italian horror.
He's the Italian Rick Wakeman. Perfect. Yes, and yes to all of the above. And not insults either. If you're listening, Dario, is he dead?
Or Rick.
Probably dead. Is he dead?
He's not dead. He's still making movies of declining quality.
Hell. Why? What's he doing that for?
What else are you gonna do? You're literally one of the most famous horror directors in the world.
Retire.
Stop making movies?
Yeah,
Die?
just go to the beach, you fucking weirdo. I don't understand why people do this. I don't understand why anyone makes any money by a certain age and doesn't just stop doing everything. My whole life has just been a quest to stop. I don't know why people carry on. I just don't get it. That's fucking crazy to me. He's still making movies. He's got to be 100.
Yeah.
You fucking missed the point, pal. I've never seen Phenomena, and I'm actually quite keen to.
Phenomena is my favorite Dario Argento movie and my favorite
really?
Goblin soundtrack. Yeah.
How interesting. Okay, I no longer trust it. I'm not sure I want to watch it.
I know how much you don't like to have a movie spoiled for you.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, at one point there is a chimpanzee with a straight razor.
The thing is, you could have put any thing with a thing there, and I wouldn't have been surprised. You could have been like a Hornet with a bugle, and I'd have been like, of course there is. A Dodge Challenger with a dildo, and I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Nothing isn't Argento. That's the problem here.
Yeah. It's got everything you love, right? It's got
Jennifer Connelly, dude. Wow.
It's got Jennifer Connelly, it's got a knife wielding chimpanzee, and it's got Donald Pleasance.
All of those things are fantastic. So Suspiria, we're summing it up by saying there's not much you can say about it that A, hasn't already been said, or B, that's interesting. But here today on this podcast, I feel like we've at least attempted both.
I think we've said some interesting things.
Yeah.
Some of it's been cut out, but
all of it's been cut out. The central question I have is it interesting enough to exist as a work of art that deserves the praise it has?
yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Like we say, even divorced from any sort of real plot and narrative, it's interesting enough as an artifact and as a collection of visuals and as a mood piece that like it's always going to have a place. I think anybody who watches it will have a strong reaction to it. They might hate it, but like, blah blah blah. Art's meant to invoke a reaction. It's not necessarily meant to be Transformers 3 Rise of the Boner.
Would watch. Is mood piece, forgive my dumbness, is that a phrase or is that something you just said?
I think it might be a phrase.
Because that's exactly what this is. That's a phrase I didn't know that sums up what this movie is. I mean, imagine if you're in the mood for Suspiria and you watch it. It must hit like crack.
Yeah. I feel like mood piece is a phrase. I feel like every time I watch Suspiria, I'm in the mood. I'm put in the mood by the opening bit of Goblin score.
Yeah, that opening sequence puts you there 100%. It
Like the
is
second,
hard to. That's why I don't understand watching it in the background. I'd be just fucking. Whatever I'm doing in the foreground is not being done well. Look at it that way. If I'm making an omelette, it's a shit show.
yeah. Well, I mean that's my life, but
Shit show of omelettes to a
yeah.
goblin score.
But like the second you hear like it's just you can't escape it. It's so good. Like I see basically the entire movie in my head when I sit down and listen to that
Yeah.
soundtrack.
The delivery of that noise, the vocal delivery of that, is hands down one of the creepiest things I've ever heard because it has such a visceral attachment to a visual. To me, I can see the creepy mouth doing that.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful thing for a small piece of vocal to do. How often do you imagine the mouth singing the lyrics to a song that you hear in a movie? Almost never. But
Almost
that,
never.
every single time, it's so creepy and haunting and witch-like, I will say. It's so evocative of witchy mouths and noses and maggots and goblins and piss. It's brilliant. I like it.
And it creates, even like outside of the context of watching the film, it still creates this intense mood.
Yeah.
And like when
A
you
mood piece, if you will. I've just coined the phrase.
that's genius. Well done, mate. Like even like when you combine that with the visuals,
Yeah.
like it becomes something intensely magic. It's like alchemy or something. It's like it's amazing.
The movie is kind of about magic, right?
Yeah.
So to say that there's a lot of magic sort of permeating a lot of the action in this movie, and there's a lot of, it's like magic without magic. No one's going alakazam and then magic happens. We're sort of seeing the magic and assuming it's coming from the coven.
Yeah, but I think the magic is more that we see at least is potions, right? Like she's being poisoned in the food and the wine,
Yeah.
the bland food that
Yeah.
she's forced to eat that looks delicious.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor and I prescribe you a massive cup of wine every day.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
yes,
the
please,
same in
doc.
Dracula. When you reread Dracula, and it's like every time anything happens, they just fucking pile brandy on people. Like, oh, you've had a horrible shock. Drink all this brandy. Oh, you're anemic. Let me rub brandy all over your body. It's fucking brilliant.
In the Leslie Nielsen movie Dracula Dead and Loving It, they replaced brandy with enemas. It's so funny.
Remember this?
It's like, oh, you're hyperventilating. Get this man an enema.
Fucking genius. See, now there's a movie I can get behind.
Dario Argento made a Dracula movie within the last 5 years.
Oh, don't do that, Derek.
Don't watch it. Please
never
don't
gonna.
watch it.
You know where you stand with a Leslie Nielsen enema movie, and it's not firmly between is this shit or art. It's just good.
Oh, here's a thing that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
That Alsatian is a fucking terrible guide dog.
Terrible guide dog, yes. Terrible prop, yes. Terrible acting, yes. Terrible gore, yes. Terrible scene, yes. Somehow, terrible movie, not allowed to say so. That fucking dog. That's supposed to be funny, surely.
I don't think it is supposed to be funny, but I
Oh,
do
for
think it is
fuck's
funny. But I just
It's
think
very funny.
even like not in that scene, it's still like it's just barking at random things. Like you're meant to be a guide dog.
Yeah, it's trash guide dog.
Yeah, that guide dog would have been shot at the guide dog training facility, whatever they call that.
Yep. Yeah, there's no way that guide dog's passing fucking police academy or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, they do shoot the dogs that wash out, don't they?
Yeah, totally, yeah. That's the problem. They fucking almost definitely do. Not the fucking papier-mâché ones with googly eyes like in this movie. They get a place in the halls of cinematic history as being masterpiece props.
That scene is one of the least visually interesting scenes in the whole movie, and therefore, like, it's easy to deride it.
Yeah,
but, like,
it's easy to pick it out. Yeah, it looks like Wolfen.
yeah, but there are some insane, like, brand new, innovative things happening with the camera in that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, anything you say about this movie that you think sucks, you can also say, but isn't the lighting interesting? Straight away.
I've got a scene where you can say it's not visually interesting and there's minimal redeeming quality to it.
Go on.
The huge info dump when Udo Kier shows up.
But Udo Kier's interesting.
I mean, he is a very interesting looking man, but it's just him sat on a wall for 28 minutes talking about witches.
But I was gasping for that. I remember on first watch, I was like, oh, fucking give me an anchor. Give me an Udo. And my prayers were answered because he shows up and he actually tells you what's going on. You're like, oh, thank fuck. A little bit of Grage. Now we can go back to fucking splatter psychological nightmare. But thank you for like a shred of a story.
I love when he's like, oh, I don't actually know anything about witches, but I brought someone who does.
Yeah, so funny. Why? Why did you bring that person? It's brilliant. Yeah, I just think any criticism you level at this movie is going to be levelly and rightly met with, but isn't it fucking cool when this happens? Or, but look at this. And remember when? You know, it's fuel for debate, it's fuel for conversation, it's a movie to appreciate, and I don't know, some people savor it, some people fight through it. Whatever happens, you're totally right when you say it's eliciting a strong reaction in its audience, which is surely Dario's point, the little fucking attention seeker. That's the whole idea, right?
Yeah. The
fucking
maestro.
audacity of calling a movie director self-indulgent or attention-seeking is still completely, like, ridiculous to me.
Of course, yeah. Right, Sam, shall we take a break and come back and sum up and give our scores?
Let's do it.
Will you give it up, man? Nobody's out there. We're alone. Oh no, there's somebody out there. I'm picking up all this crosstalk.
Summing it up with Jamie. That's the new theme song.
I like it.
So how do you sum up Suspiria? Come on, fucking keep it under 2 hours if you can.
It's hard to sum it up because every criticism that you have said or that I have read, I agree with.
Yeah.
But this movie is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's 80% of the visuals in this movie live inside my brain.
Yeah.
All the time. And I can recall them and just think, God, that's cool. Same with the score. Like, I listen to the Goblin score all the time. I mean, I love Goblin, but it's an amazing collection of songs that work outside of the context of the movie.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, a lot of scores don't. Like, sometimes I think about, like, say Riz Ortolani's like intro music to Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
And like the jarring difference there. And like you could listen to that as a bit of weird sort of easy listening prog. But like when I listen to basically any Goblin score, but specifically that main Suspiria theme, like I experience the entire movie viscerally. Like it's happening in my brain. And that's
horrifying.
Yeah. I mean,
but impressive.
I try and think about like other scores that I listen to and like if when I hear the theme, Alan Silvestri's theme for Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I think about Back to the Future, but I don't see the entire movie. And maybe it's because they don't repeat that theme 40 times. But
it's very much attached to the entire movie.
Yeah.
It's like Creature from the Black Lagoon. When I hear dun dun dun, I see the whole movie.
But like, it's so incredibly beautiful, and like, there's so many weird, interesting things. Like, there are shots that like in any other movie you'd be like, this is bad. Why are we only seeing people from the chin up? Why is every time we see someone's face, why is it an absolute smash cut to the center of their nose? Like,
yeah.
But in this, it just feels right. It feels like that. Why wouldn't you do that in Suspiria?
Yeah. And that's again, I think, massive part of the magic is you create, Dario Argento creates a place in this movie where all of that is fucking acceptable. It's barely even surprising. And by the end of the movie, you kind of want more of it.
Yeah.
And that is an artistic vision made reality. That's the special kind of alchemy we're talking about.
Yeah, and there's random shots of weird stuff. There's a moment where it just pans across 3 gargoyles,
Yeah.
and like
I mean, everyone goes nuts about the woman with the little shard, whatever that is, that shines light on her. Everyone, talks in enormous detail about what that's about, what that means, what that is. That's just a bizarre little visual.
yeah, anytime that little boy is on screen is especially jarring.
Yeah, definitely.
The scene where they're in the pool and like they're swimming, sort of, because they're trying to not like make any waves.
Yeah.
So you get this really jarring scene of like them and their heads just above the water, again, like shot in a way that is completely alien to any cinema viewer, film viewer. And then like when it cuts to the wide shot and they're just like very gently trying to swim in a way that doesn't affect the water. And it makes these really intensely jarring, but also incredibly beautiful things happen before you. And you're just like, I have no frame of reference for this.
Yeah.
It's like walking through a gallery. It's just like a bunch of unconnected visuals that are all beautiful and have some sort of meaning prescribed to them. But you either see it and know it, or you don't, and that's fine.
It's like scrolling through the recommended feed on Instagram. Follow at FT Horror Show while you're doing that.
Do that, and while
Tell your
you're
friends.
tell your friends and review and rate this podcast.
Do that. What are you going to rate this movie?
It's a tricky rate because I am not remotely impartial.
You're not supposed to be. It's your podcast. You make the rules. You just said this is one of the greatest movies ever made.
I would give this 9,999 maggots falling from the ceiling out of 10,000 maggots falling from the ceiling.
That's a fucking assload of maggots.
Yeah.
Wow. You look a bit like Walter White right now. It's just struck me.
I just have similar glasses and no hair.
And a beard.
Yeah.
And a pink t-shirt. As we've already said.
Yeah.
Is it obvious I'm trying to put off summing up? I think what I'll do here is I'll try and say something that at least we haven't said yet. I think what I like most about this movie is how influential it is all the shit that comes after it. It's everything you just said. It's more, it's less, it's everything in between. It's a hot glass of wine on a hot day. And for me, it's 4.5 12-year-old girls out of 10.
That's quite low for
Pretty low.
Suspiria, the greatest
I rate on
movie ever
enjoyment.
made.
But listen, we rate in different. I rate on how much I enjoy watching the movie.
Yeah.
And I enjoy so much this movie gives us afterwards. It dives like a fucking drill into the brain of people like David Lynch and into all kinds of, areas of movie making that for me are a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. So I don't like watching this movie, but I love that it exists and I respect it big time. And I really like the fans of this movie and I wish I was one of them. So if you see me on the edge of your tittering little group of oddballs, invite me in. Convince me that it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I mean, I've just spent 2 hours trying to do that, and you
We
gave
can
it
eat
4
ice
out of
cream
10.
off the floor together.
Well, one last thing from my notes that I haven't mentioned is there's a scene where Susie Banyan, Jessica Harper's character, is throwing food into the toilet, and it makes me feel really sick. Just something about like food sloshing into the toilet just makes me feel really ill.
Yeah. I've recently seen a toilet scene in a movie that is by far the most hilarious, harrowing, and emotionally wrenching toilet scene that I've seen in such a long time that nothing I'm going to watch for the near future is going to touch it.
Is it Look Who's Talking?
No, it's Look Who's Talking Poo, the shit-themed sequel. No, I watched Triangle of Sadness, and for people who've seen that movie, oh boy, there's a toilet scene. So, Suspiria. Wowzers, trousers, what a wild ride. Thanks for joining me, Jamie.
Thanks for joining me, Sam.
It was definitely that way around, wasn't it? I was definitely joining you on this one. Yeah, what a movie. What a man.
And don't
What a
worry,
world.
Sam. Next week, we're going to talk about Frankenhooker.
Yay. Oh, God, I hope I don't hate it. I can't wait to watch it. It's called Frankenhooker. Come on.
Yeah.